Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to our community. I'm Andy Thornton, and I have a special guest here with me who I'll introduce here in a little bit, but we're coming to you live from the I've Decided studios here in Peoria, Illinois. And our program today is sponsored by I've Decided and the YMCA. So we're happy to be here. Before we get started, I'm going to put a little plug in for a special event at the Y, Peggy, if that's okay. We have an Easter egg hunt this Saturday at the Y. So we're inviting anybody really from the community who's got little ones who want to experience Easter egg hunt at the YMCA. They're on 7000 Fleming Lane, just off of Willow Knolls. So come on out Saturday afternoon. It starts at 2, runs till 4, and the egg hunt will be right there at the end, about 3:30, 3:45. But we've got bounce houses, we've got face painting, we've got some arts and craft activities there on site, and we're expecting right now a couple hundred kids to be there. So come on out. I know we have thousands of eggs stuffed and ready for these little kids at the Y. So I wanted to get that out there and let people know that was coming. So Peggy Jacques is my guest today, and we're going to dig into the discussion around the weekly winning word, which is significance. But before we do that, Peggy, I wanted you to share with the folks who are listening and watching who you are and what it is that you do, so they can get to know you a little bit better.
Okay. My name is Peggy, and I'm a nurse, and I've always really had a passion for older adults and have seen, I guess, some of the not so good side effects of aging that impact older adults. And so I've always had a passion to try to do something good for them. And originally I thought that would be to build the best nursing home ever, and have realized that's probably not a realistic goal. So I've stumbled upon, after doing some homework through the University of Phoenix, that Peoria doesn't have a senior center. And so I, with some mentors, and dug in and decided that this is something that is important to serve older people. So that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, and I think it's great. And you and I have had the opportunity to talk before today, so you've given me a little bit more depth and understanding of what your mission is. And we're going to go through that a little bit through our conversation and learn a little bit more about your experience and what your vision is for Graceland. But I think it's really cool.
Thank you.
And one of the things that stood out to me in our conversation the other day was, your commitment to try to build your vision for Graceland through collaboration, right? Which is so important and difficult at times to do, because when you collaborate with partners, everybody kind of has a little bit different perspective on things. But I do think it's a unique way and an important way to kind of help build what it is that you're trying to do, right? So I think that's really cool, and I appreciate that, because we do a lot of that at the Y too, and it's really a kind of
stronger together.
Absolutely, we are, and I appreciate that. So welcome, Peggy, to our show, and I'm really excited to dig into this discussion around significance with you, and kind of look at the importance of significance through your perspective of how you've approached building this vision around Graceland, because it really is pretty cool. So before we do that, though, let's kind of set the framework for significance, and those out there that are watching that have read the weekly winning resource that Kim set out on Sunday night, you'll some of this stuff will be familiar to you, but the definition for significance is where we'll start. And it's the quality of being worthy of attention or having a special meaning. And I think Kim did a really good job of framing this up in her article this week, of looking at significance through the context of adding value to others, right? And that's what you're doing in your work. I think I told you this on our call the other day, that I think you're the perfect guest for this, because that's exactly what you're trying to do for this senior community, is add value to their lives. So it's not about building Peggy up through this work. It's about supporting others, and I think that's really pretty cool. So congratulations to you for that. But John, there was a quote in Kim's article, and I love John Maxwell. I don't know if you're a fan of John
Yeah.
Maxwell or not, but he is one of the best leadership writers out there, and speakers and authors and all those things. And I've read a few of his books. I've actually led my staff through a couple of his studies at different times in my career. And I think it's that valuable. But he had a quote that Kim shared in his article that says that success is when you add, or when I add to myself, and significance is when I add value to others. I think that's so cool. And such an important perspective to have, especially as a leader of other people, and of opportunities that are going to serve people, is that you're there to serve others, right? And I think that's really pretty cool. So in Kim's article, she basically laid out 5 keys, right, to unlock a life of significance, I think is the phrase that she used, which is really pretty cool. So we're going to dig into each of these 5, and we're going to talk to Peggy about how she's gone through this experience with Graceland through each one of these. So are you ready?
I am.
All right, cool. So the first one is believe. And I think that's the perfect place to start, because if you don't believe, it's not going to happen, right? You got to have a perspective of belief and understanding that God put you here for a purpose, right? So I'm curious to hear from you. What was it that gave you the belief that Graceland was where you needed to be, and that whole concept? So talk to us a little bit about that. When did it become believable?
Okay, that's a good question. I have a strong sense of justice.
Okay.
And I really am opposed to injustice, even as a little kid. And I think all of us are that, right? That's not fair.
Right.
I'm one of 9 kids, so
wow.
I'm all about
lot of that.
I'm all about fair and unfair. But I grew up. My mom was a nurse, and with all those kids, she was busy. So our grandparents didn't live close, but we had a lot of elders in our community, and so I would visit with them for long periods of time. I'm sure my mom was relieved have one less taken care of, but I remember some of their lessons in gardening and behaving and cooking and just lots of fun things. And then when my mom went back to work, she took a little hiatus after the twins were born. Number 7, 8 and 9.
8 and 9 were twins? Holy cow.
Yeah, they took my seat at the table. So I do have a strong sense of justice. But she went back to work, and I was a volunteer. I was a candy striper in a nursing home. And I really was 10 or 11. I didn't know what I was doing, but I brought food to people and I talked to them, and it wasn't probably the best place. And it just broke my heart that people weren't treated right. And so I just thought that wasn't right. And I've worked in several nursing homes, but I've just always felt a sense of justice. And so I feel like I prayed a lot about what is it with my passion for elders that I could really do to make something that would be better, not only for them, but our whole society, because they have so much to give. So that prayer led me to study and get that healthcare certification, and then led me to Kim with I've Decided and the small business development at Bradley. And between Kim and Philip Lockwood, I knew that if I did the work and I had some hands to hold, I could go forward. So that's when I knew I could believe it would happen.
Wow. So this started in you as a young child. That is really pretty cool that you've had this passion to work with seniors and to enhance their quality of life. I think that's really cool. And then you've taken that passion and you invested it in the education piece, right? Learning of how to build a business and how to engage with others and how to do all of that, and to trust yourself too. I think you told me on the phone the other day too, is to you kind of brought it all together through that experience. And I think that's really, really pretty neat. The second key is embrace, right? So that's easier said than done, because it's easy to embrace the idea when everything's going well, right? But it doesn't always go well, and that's life, right? We struggle in life and everything that we do all the time, and we have to be able to embrace the vision, embrace the goal, embrace the commitment that you've made to building Graceland throughout the entire experience. And I think one of the things that this seems to come up just about every time in this show is we talk about adversity in some respects. So I feel like I'm repeating myself every time it comes up. But
well, it keeps repeating itself.
Yeah, but it's so important to understand that adversity is going to happen, right? And how you respond to adversity is really what's important, right? Because that's when our opportunities to grow are, I think, the biggest, is when we face those challenges and we do it the right way. So how do you keep your focus on your vision even when things get difficult? Because I imagine they have over the last several years. If you've gone through this process, you've probably asked yourself, should I really be doing this at different times? So talk to us a little bit about how you've overcome those challenges and you've just embraced this opportunity, and you're committed to seeing it through to the end.
It's a really good question. It's almost embracing like a prickly pear.
Okay.
Don't you think? Probably every day there's a challenge.
Sure.
Whatever it is, time, meeting a deadline, someone not being happy with you, not enough resources. And the feelings, like especially Kim's taught this a lot, is the feelings are feelings, but their feelings aren't necessarily facts. So just continuing to feed myself. When I run, I listen to podcasts on leadership. I listen to how to work through adversity, how other people have dealt with that. And then building, like you said, with collaboration, different mentors and different support systems of talking, like when you did this, how did you deal with that?
Learning from their experiences.
And having cards to play with when something happens. We had an event come up, totally blindsided me, and I reached out to a mentor I met through I've Decided, and said, holy cow, this is a big event. What do I do? And a family, our kids' godparents, and people that I deeply trust, and they kind of guided me through to make a very difficult decision, but it was the best. And I feel like what happens every time I'm obedient to what God wants me to be doing, whether or not I'm comfortable, and most of the time I'm not, because I am a nurse. I love patient care. But I always get that feedback from somebody. A colleague said that was very difficult, but you did the right thing, or you did the right thing. Next time, think about doing this. So I don't know. I guess that just helps me. I can't describe it. There's no other way. I don't have a choice to not. I mean, I do, but I don't want to take that choice.
Yeah. Well, and I think when you described your passion has been with you since you were a young girl, right? So there's a deep rooted sense of belief in you that this is kind of your calling. And I think when we get to design, we'll talk a little bit more about that too, which is another key that's coming up. But you said something just a minute ago that I wanted to highlight, and it's your faith. Right? That you lean on your faith, and and you believe that what you're doing is purpose that God has given you, right? And I think that when we have that understanding in our life, it's easier to go through the rough spots, right? Because you know that this is just part of the process, and I'm not alone, right? He's walking with me, or he's carrying me through this in some regards. And that stood out to me, that's an important piece for you, and it has helped you to be able to embrace this and hold on to it even when it does get difficult.
I'm glad you brought that up, because firmly knowing that this is the right thing to do. It is a justice issue. We're commanded to care for our elders. There's only one commandment that says honor your father and mother. And that's in kinship, but some stories actually help me laugh at some of the things. Like I was thinking, like, I read a book. It was such a neat book. It was called Visioneering, and it was built around the story of Nehemiah and how he had the vision of rebuilding that wall around Jerusalem, and talk about adversity. But it kind of makes me laugh sometimes, because I'm like, okay, I don't have a king giving me letters to get, I just, I mean, those kind of faith-based, knowledge-based, commitment-based stories really help you navigate that.
Sure. Sure. I think it's great. I think relying on your faith is an important asset to have. And when we have that, we're bound to be more successful. There's no doubt about it. So the third key is dream, right? And you got to have big goals, and you got to challenge yourself if you're going to be successful. And you have to stay focused on them. And the world is distracting, right? Just by nature. And it seems like the older I get, the more distracted I become, because there's so many different ways for me to get information or to be in tune with other things that are happening. But you got to be able to stay focused on your goals, and you got to have that clear vision. So you talked a little bit about this, but I'm going to ask you the question anyway, is what was it that shaped your dream to develop Graceland? And you talked a little bit about, since a young kid, you've been involved with kind of helping senior citizens and being engaged with that. But when did the vision for Graceland, I guess, become your dream? And what did that look like?
When the Barnum and Bailey movie came out, and the theme song was "When You Dream at Night and You Can See the Whole Horizon Coming," I was actually on the treadmill and visualizing what a senior center would look like in Peoria. And the word, my husband and I had an opportunity to see Paul Simon when he was here. And the Graceland song he sang with all the beautiful instrumentation was enchanting. And I thought, I want this to be a place of grace and dignity. And how do you communicate that? And I thought, a land of grace, Graceland. And so that gave me goosebumps. It does still today, because I wanted our culture and distracting. I feel like the older people get, the less engaged they feel like they can be, because they don't understand this route or that route, or there's this distance that seems to keep growing. And being with older adults that do get that opportunity to be engaged is a grace-filled moment, because they're able to, oh, I'm important. Oh, I matter. Oh, I went through this one time, and just telling stories and so forth. So I feel like that crystallization of Graceland and the title has helped communicate what we want it to be, and knowing grace is not something you can touch. And so it leaves that vision open, because this is not my will. I mean, if this was about me, I think I would have probably taken a vacation a long time ago. This really is hard work for God. So that helps keep me dreaming and hopeful.
I love the word grace. And I was just in a Bible study earlier this week with some men in my church, and we were talking about the word grace, and the leader of the Bible study asked the group to define it, and one of the men said, an unmerited favor. And that's really what it is, right? And when you think about the perspective of grace from God's perspective, is, we don't deserve any of it, right? And you're kind of taking that and applying it to this perspective of providing it to these seniors because they deserve it, right? They should be able to live a life that is fulfilling, and you're going to do that through this experience and create that experience for them. And I think that's really pretty cool. So the fourth key is prioritize, right? You got to have prioritize your work schedule. You got to stay focused. I know there's probably a ton of distractions for you because you're employed, right? A full-time RN, you're married, you have a family, and then you have this dream going on over here of developing Graceland. And so how do you prioritize your life in a way to where you can apply the proper focus?
I actually have a spiritual director.
Oh, cool.
And she has helped me continue to keep what priorities
Nice.
are there. So my first priority is to be obedient to what God wants me to do. And my husband knows clearly that this is what I need to do. And so do our children. So
awesome.
Now that our schedules are, so our oldest is in college and medical school, actually.
Wow.
So now that that's done, my husband has just totally stepped up to the plate and doing a lot of the things around the house and keeping things moving. Good. So that after dinner, you're right, I have that schedule. So, I make sure I have time for, work, right. But also time to take care of myself, because I know that I'm supposed to, I have to stay healthy, right. In order to keep this through. I need to be a role model, for our board. I have to learn. So I look at every time I spend and try to make sure that it's what's important gets that time. And seek people that are wiser than I in terms of what to do and where to go and where to spend, spend our energy. So
that's awesome. And so it sounds like you're reprioritizing all the time, right? And you've got a coach in a sense who's helping you think about that. So you don't lose sight of it, because I'm sure it changes for you, right? Depending on what's going on. And you have to spend time with your husband if you want to keep him working around the house for you, right? So you can do this. So, right. and your kids need you, and work needs you, and all those things. So it's constantly challenging. I think that was the message that was kind of coming through in the article is you got to stay on top of that all the time and manage that. And I think that's really important, because what might be important this week may not be nearly as important next week, right, as life kind of develops.
Changes, so,
I think that's pretty cool. And I think it's actually really neat that you've got somebody to help you think through that strategically. An outside voice, right, who can help you recheck things.
Right.
So we'll move on to the final key, and that's design. And this one hit me really hard, because I'm actually reading a book that I'm going to share about in a minute, that's helping me to think through designing my life. Rather than designing my lifestyle around my career, is designing my career around my lifestyle, right? It's the opposite of how we all approach it. And I'd been thinking about this, and while I was on vacation a couple of weeks ago, I started reading this book, and I'm just into the first part of it. And the book is called The Buddha and the Badass, pardon my French, but that's the name of the book. And it's written about this whole concept, or this exercise that I'm working on right now in it is called Uncovering Your Soul Print for Your Life. And it asks you to think through back to your earliest memories of all the positive and negative experiences that you've gone through. And the author argues that those experiences are where your deepest, most ingrained values began and kind of started from. And if you can understand those and where they came from, then you can start to understand better what your purpose is and start to align kind of your career around that, so that you have more, I guess, passion for your career. So I found this key to be really impactful to me, just because it's a reality that I'm kind of wrestling with now. But from your perspective, I mean, you appear to be really sure that Graceland is something you were created for. I mean, you've talked about it just in the 20 minutes we'd be on the show, right? When you were a little child, you were involved with seniors, and you were compassionate towards them and wanted to work with them. And I get the sense in talking with you today and the other day when we were on the phone is that you believe that, and you know that. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but how did you come to that realization? When did it start at that young age?
It must have, because I'm thinking about, I actually, when we were talking about priorities, I was thinking about our kids, because mommy guilt never goes away.
Sure.
And Easter's coming in. Now that our son isn't able to come home, I was actually gonna, in my mind, I made a Easter package to send to him. I used to do that when he was in college, but since I've really hit the bricks on this, I didn't. And this morning I was just going up the stairs thinking, I don't know, should I do one and make it on time? And you always are trying to figure out what's the best thing to do.
Right.
But living by design, and having priorities. When our children were little, there wasn't a holiday that wasn't, a big deal, and whatever it was. And now that they've gotten older and I've gotten busier in this, I often am apologizing, that this isn't what in my mind I would want to do for you. And they look at me and they say, Mom, this is your time to do this. So it really does help with that.
I bet it does.
But they've always been our kids have always known that I've always had a grandma. Well, it was either my mom or one of my husband's patients, or, I didn't even realize that, as you were saying, that they've known that that's always been my love. And so I think when we started, and I had met Kim, when we had an interaction, I actually met her at her gala because I nominated some friends, and I thought, who is this woman who recognizes people for doing good things? And I thought, I want to be with that person. And then I met her, and then I found out about I've decided, and I thought, well, why wouldn't I want to be associated with someone? And that's when Kim found out what my dream was, and then we just kept talking and talking. And that's when I thought, okay, I'll go back to the small business development and try one more time. And I met Philip, and I thought, okay, between Philip Lockwood and Kim, I can do this. And so we got together, and it was January and February of 2020. And we were ready to get started, and COVID hit. And I stood in my office, tears streaming down my face, like, what the heck, God? What the heck? I finally got the tools here. And, when you cry out like that, makes you want to cry, you get the answer. And I thought, in all those craziness happening in our world that has only continued, what is our job? Our job is to be love. That's our only job.
That's great.
And in that love, what is that part for? Why are we loving anyone? And the only purpose is to give glory to God. And so I thought, well, all right then. And I went to the very next day, instead of not calling into one of the, I've decided, the Zooms, I called in and said, oh my gosh, I'm staring at the wall. I don't know what to do. And Matt George said, that's not okay. Get going. This is the time. Call me tomorrow. Wow. And so, I think that's what I mean when you cry out, then you get that right back. You get that feedback right back. And so, again, rather than giving up, I think that's what and meeting people that have chosen, have started churches on the South End. They have decided that they're going to be obedient, and just that's what they have coached me to. Just be obedient and show up. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, you can have your priorities, but you just have that's not my design at all.
No.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I think it did. I think you've done a great job of kind of sharing with everybody your experience, and I'm sure that it's inspiring to folks out there. It's inspiring to me just sitting here listening to it. And there's something that you mentioned when you were describing your mommy guilt a little bit, and I don't profess to know what mommy guilt is. I'm not a mommy, but I'm married to one, and I hear that phrase a lot, and I know it's real. But the interesting thing that I heard you say as you were talking about that is that your kids have told you that, hey, it's okay. What you're doing, it's your time, right? And to me, that's an example of grace, right? Your kids have said, don't worry about it, Mom. We know what you're doing is important and has value. Keep going. So you have built an an immense support system through your family, through the I've Decided community with Kim and Phil and all those people that you've explained. And that's a really cool thing. And we've talked about a lot on this podcast of, we're only going to be as successful as the folks that we circle ourselves with, right? And you got to have people that, not just cheerleaders, people who will challenge you, like Matt, you said Matt did, right? At some point, say, hey, get up and get moving and call me tomorrow and I'll kick you in the rear again if you need it, type of thing. And you need that. And that's really, really critical. So I appreciate you taking the time today to sit and talk to us about your experience. And I look forward to learning more about Graceland. And, I've thought about it from the perspective of my world at the YMCA, and we have a commitment to serve seniors too. So I think there's probably some opportunities for us to help each other in that regard. And I look forward to exploring that with you. So, before I close, I want to remind everybody out there to take some time and do the weekly challenge this week. And that is to make a list of ways that you're being a difference maker in the lives of others. And I think when you take time to do that, it's really kind of empowering, because I don't think we give ourselves enough credit for the work that we do. And it's important for us to understand our impact. And so I encourage everybody to do that. And then I also want to leave you with a couple of references of scripture that talk about this whole commitment to significance, right? And so I did a little research, and these things will probably be relatable to others, but there's 3 proverbs that I'm going to share with you. And if you didn't know or didn't believe that it's important for you to pour into the lives of others, right, and make a difference, then it'll be hard for you to argue that after hearing these. But Proverbs 11:25 says, whoever brings blessing will be enriched, and one who waters will himself be watered. Proverbs 19:17 says, whoever is kind to the poor lends to the Lord, and he will reward them for what they have done. And Proverbs 22:9 says, the generous will themselves be blessed, for they share their food with the poor. So that's why we're all here, right? We all have a purpose, and it's to help others, to serve others, to love others. You've said that.
You know what I just thought of too? I forgot to mention. So besides the word Graceland, our team decided that it's Graceland Center for Purposeful Living.
Yes.
So
that's cool.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that, because when older people feel disengaged, they don't feel like they have a purpose as much. And so rather than healthy, because some people don't perceive themselves to be healthy, that's why we chose the word purposeful to try to help. And speaking of purposeful,
you better share about your experience.
We have an event coming up on Saturday, April 30th at the Proctor Recreation Center. And many people have a lot of questions like, do we have a building? Who are you anyway? So we hope to try to get that word out. We're not an adult daycare center. We're not a residential. Because Peoria is the 7th largest city in Illinois. And of the top 10, we're the only ones that don't have a center for older adults. A community-based hangout for people to come and socialize and connect. So in 2022, we're doing 2 of these, and this is our debut at the Proctor Recreation Center, Saturday, April 30th from 10 to about 1. And we'll have some light refreshments and speakers and vendors, and there's a number we can post, and you can call and register, or a link. We just really want to help people understand, and this isn't about our board and what we think. We want it to be a place of grace, dignity, and what is best for older people. And I am an older person, but I certainly am not going to speak for everybody. So we want their input and to help form this. This is a community base.
That's right. And you have a website?
Yes.
And a Facebook page too, right? So Graceland Center for Purposeful Living. If you Google that, you'll get to the website. Same thing for the Facebook page. So I encourage everybody to look that up, and you can get more details on this event. Well, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us too, and we look forward to seeing you next time on Our Community.